everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
So in the past few months, we've had a surprising amount of movement with our team at work.
Yeah.
So
yes.
we had someone retire.
Right.
Steve
role.
Retired, a big role. So it kind of actually created a bunch of movement. One of the things at my company is that is actually good and bad is that we've got a lot of folks that have been around a long time. We have very, very low turnover.
Right. Yes.
And it's not like we have like rocket ship growth that we're expanding roles all the time. So we kind of like a tight-ish kind of employee situation where we don't have a lot of movement opportunities.
Right.
Yeah. But recently we've had more. So I've gotten to be in a handful of conversations with some of our folks around like where they want to go in their careers, what they might want to do, if they maybe want to, switch some roles, expand what they're doing.
Right.
And it's been really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think that happened. I know you guys haven't had that happen a lot. You do have some really good people that have been there for
amazing.
Like
10,
15, like long time.
Yep. And so what I started noticing and what I thought would be interesting to hear your perspective on, because admittedly, as a guy who's pretty much never had a job.
And is virtually unemployable. Is that bad to say that out loud?
Yeah. I mean, I've never really had to be on the employee side of like advocating for my job or position or things like that. Like I've been in the fortunate or unfortunate position.
Yeah, both.
Of kind of being able to decide what that is for kind of me and everyone else. But yeah, I wanted to talk about like this idea around like how do you kind of move through the corporate ladder or through your career?
Yeah.
How do you like maybe advocate for yourself, but not maybe over advocate? Because I've actually observed a little bit of that happening with our team. And just what does it look like to kind of navigate those waters?
Yeah. I think I'm super excited about this topic actually. And you know what? It feels like oftentimes when we like riff on topics that we should talk about, it's so funny how you will have an idea or I will have an idea and you'll be like, oh yeah, that just happened to me. Or you'll have an idea and I'll be like, oh my gosh, twice this week that happened. And that's actually the case. This topic is like something that I have been thinking about myself in the last couple of days because I'm helping a couple people find roles. So I have a lot of opinion about this. People have a real funny perspective when it comes to advocating for themselves. And it's so often people are very tentative, tentative to talk about themselves, tentative to focus on themselves, tentative to be able to appropriately advocate for themselves. And while you said, you have a couple that maybe are over advocating, I would say that that's a much less percentage of population.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah. I think most people don't do it enough. They're scared to, or they just get such a specific framework that it doesn't work.
Well, the interesting part of that is that when we say advocate for yourself, like what do we actually meaning, right?
Yeah.
Because what I initially go to is, or my observation, even myself is, most people are like pretty humble.
Yes.
Like, yes, there is a subsection of the population that's like way overboard and over egotistical and everything. But I would say like on whole, people are more humble than egotistical. And we have a lot of core values and stories around like just, heads down
Right.
work, like if you just like quietly do your work and,
Right.
um,
Right.
like there's stories around that, like don't fly too close to the sun kind of stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and even as kids, we're brought up to
Yes.
like go to school, shut your mouth, get your work done. You know,
Fit
children
in.
should be seen,
Don't
not
stand
heard,
out.
right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
don't stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Fit in. So there's all of these values, and those are not necessarily bad things,
No.
but they
No.
do sometimes fly in the face of advocating for yourself.
Well, I
They're
think I
oppositional.
yeah, I agree. And I think that, we've talked a lot about that on a personal front, how you've been raised and how you think about yourself and the language you use about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
either internally or externally, affects you in your personal life. But this topic today, specific to your workplace,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a really interesting one, because a lot of times people think that they can put on a different shell when they get to their work, or they can put on a different hat and no one will see who they really are. Meaning that they really think that they're showing up in a way that they aren't,
Mm-hmm.
I guess is the way to say that. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I don't mean that in they're doing a bad job. What I mean is they're not doing a good enough job of saying what they're really good at, or what they're very confident in. Most people have a very big fear about doing that.
Because you don't want to brag, right?
Yeah, but the problem is that a lot of times then people end up not, just hoping they'll get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Hoping that, oh, well, my reputation will, everybody knows that, or,
Yep.
oh, that's not me. Like a lot of times I'll have conversations with people. One of the byproducts of being a coach is people will ask me a lot for help or support
Mm-hmm.
in that skill set. Help me figure this out, not as a professional, I want to hire you, but just, I know you're really good at this. Do you have an opinion, kind of thing? And I love helping people,
Mm-hmm.
So I am in this conversation with people a lot. Right now, in the last 3 weeks, I've helped 2 men look for jobs. And both of them, one's in flight now, one just landed somewhere. But both of them are highly educated, very polished, and just having no idea, absolutely no idea how to articulate that skill base, how to show up in a way where they aren't worried that they're going to stand out for looking like they're trying to be all that and a bag of chips or whatever, right? But it's so many times you see the exact same patterns happening over and over again. And I think there's some real specific times in employment where this is a conversation, you know?
Yeah, the whole getting passed over for a role because you are too quiet and too heads down is a really hard one.
Oh, it is. It is.
Because it happens all the time.
Yeah. And I think, I think that's one of the times is when you're looking for a job, when there is a new job. So it could be a role within your existing company that you want, or it could be a brand new job that you've not either never had before, or you've had something similar in a different company, but this one might be slightly different, so you don't feel the same level of confidence.
Yeah. I would say that from the employer side, from the manager side, I have been totally guilty of like, and we don't have that big of a team, right? Like I should know what everybody kind of wants or where they want to go, but I've been totally guilty of not thinking of people when there's promotion opportunities.
Yeah. Yep.
And I feel bad about that, but there's, again, I can't be in the day-to-day
No,
of
you can't
everybody.
No. No. And you do have, by the way, you do have enough people where that's actually not something that you could do. You can't
Thanks for
know.
releasing my guilt about it.
Yeah. I mean, if you had a team of 10, perhaps, but when you get more than 50, you're, which you are, that's a little more difficult to I know this person
Well,
really, really well, and they wear red socks on Thursdays or bowling
yeah,
days. Like,
exactly.
yeah, it doesn't happen that
So
way.
when I think about people advocating for themselves at work, there's a couple things.
Yeah.
It's like and the first one is like, what's your goal? Like, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone, for whatever reason, I always think like, if you're advocating for work, this conversation is about, I want a bigger title and more money.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've been told that those are the ways
Hmm.
that you prove your worth at work,
Yep.
is if you get more money or you have a certain title.
Yep. Or I manage more people, or there's
Yeah.
there's
Mm-hmm.
something that you want. So first, my advice
That's
is
good.
like, figure out what your goal is,
Yeah. And
and
right there, oh, go
be
ahead.
honest about what your goal is.
Yeah, that's what I was
Don't
going to
just
say is,
take like the default societal
right,
path that you think you should take.
right. Exactly. That's what I was going to say is, and there's a real natural departure line here. Most people, when they become experts at something, they get really, really good at their job.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden their manager leaves and there's a role open to run the department, for
Yep.
example. This is a very natural place where people automatically start putting commentary in their own minds,
Hmm.
that they start to self-shame. They start to say like, I should, like, and they try to talk themselves into the fact that if they're good in this role, that perhaps they should just manage the department.
Hmm.
And there's a really natural split here that I see all the time. And that is, if you are a highly analytical and technical person that enjoys the more technical parts of your job, and you are not an extrovert, or you're not somebody who naturally gravitates towards being with a lot of people, this is probably, being a manager is probably something that isn't going to be what's in your wheelhouse.
Yep.
And it isn't because you're not good enough. It's simply because there are other ways that you can elevate your career that don't include doing something that you really don't like,
Yep.
which is being around a bunch of people all the time and managing them.
I am
and
gonna
that's
I am gonna throw like the challenge flag on the field, because there's a lot of introverts who are also exceptional managers. You don't have to
yes,
be an extrovert to be a manager.
I agree. However, I agree. Okay, sorry. I'm using kitschy phrases.
You are.
However, I will say that people that are highly introverted, or one of the markers of being a low extrovert, okay? So
Mhm.
like we have this continuum, right? But one of the
Yep.
markers is the lower in extroversion on the charts for personality assessments. The higher levels typically of analytics and technical and data-driven
Yep.
interests, okay? This isn't bad or good, it just is. And the opposite of those things are the people side. The best way is like, as you talk about communicating. If you're somebody who loves to talk and has loves to tell stories and interact with people, likes to learn with a bunch of people in conversation, those are natural gravitators towards people. The people that have more interest in analytical tasking, they enjoy maybe learning on their own. They need to recharge by themselves. These are people that, again, yeah, it's not about your management skill. It's just your natural predisposition to where your energy goes. He's smiling. Okay, so you guys, I've just triggered JJ Big Style right now.
We'll resume this conversation later.
But I'm using that as an example because a
Yep.
lot of people are, yes, you and maybe a handful of others are quite good. But what we're talking about is your natural predisposition. My point is,
it's more like when, don't just take roles because it
yes,
looks like on the org chart or on the something
yes,
that's where you should go. Just be honest with what you're great at and what gives you energy is like the
exactly.
key part.
Yes.
And what
because-
I was
yes,
gonna say about
exactly.
it is, with your goals, there's a lot of other goals
Mhm.
for people that
Yeah.
aren't like
Yes.
money
yes,
and title.
yes,
right?
yes,
They
exactly.
could be
Yeah.
they could be all of the other more intangible things. They could be like way better hours that
Mhm.
work for your family,
Yeah.
right? It could be more vacation time. There's
Yeah.
other things that you can negotiate for
Yep.
in your job that are maybe way more valuable to you than the actual dollars or
Yep.
the title.
The other thing is that in these roles, so while I didn't maybe describe that perfectly, what I will say is on the opposite side of this, though, there's other ways of valuing yourself and increasing your role in the same environment, but just in a different way.
Mhm.
So rather than it only being through a leadership role, the other opportunities are to get a better technical skill of some sort,
Yep.
get a
Training.
new
Yep.
training, or take on a specific type of different
Mhm.
projects or larger projects, and still be able to get increased salary, even a seat at the table, having a better
Mhm.
voice for the organization because of your expertise.
Yep.
So there are many ways that you can
Yep.
really start thinking about what your goal is and why.
And along that vein of kind of advocating for some things you want, if a thing you want is to maybe learn more about how different parts of the organization work,
Yep.
and you maybe want to get a seat at the table at
Right.
at whatever, at the management meeting, at the leadership meeting, at something,
Mm-hmm.
um, have those conversations. And
Yes.
but
Yeah.
have them, to me, I always appreciate when those conversations are like someone who is seeking to learn and expand their knowledge and come at it from like a mentorship perspective
Yeah.
versus like I've been here for 15 years and I deserve this. Like,
Yes.
well,
Yeah. 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 Oh my gosh, this is such a good thing. So I totally agree with you. And what I also was going to say is, if you want to have those conversations, you're right. I wish more people would do it. What they usually do is they wait until they're very upset or something happens in the company that they can
Mhm.
attach to and use that particular thing.
Mhm.
And then it ends up going sideways because you're focusing on that thing instead of what it is that you're really coming with.
Yeah.
So that's a great perspective, JJ, having the conversation more in a neutral and objective positioning allows you to really get your arms around what it is that you want
Mhm.
and how you can communicate that to other people, and that they hear you and they don't say, oh, Melissa's just mad because she's not going to get this.
Mhm.
You know, yeah, I think that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, I like, it's a funny um kind of friction point where it's like a lot of managers, actually, I would say it on a whole, like, do want to help support
Mm-hmm.
their employees and their employees' goals.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of organizations, there's just not a way to do that, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's right.
if you want to be the CEO someday, cool, but also that's going to be really hard because there's just not enough movement, right?
Yes. Yeah. And a
Um,
lot of leaders do feel really, they will almost get, defensive's not the right word, but
I
they do start to feel really personally like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything about this.
yeah, I feel
Um,
trapped. Like
yeah, they feel trapped. Yeah, that's a good word.
and sometimes for our team, we've had to kind of coach people out. Like, I hear you on your career goal, and unfortunately, I can't provide that for you here.
Right. Right.
And I would love to support you in
Yeah.
finding that somewhere else,
Right. Yeah. You've
which
always been good about that.
is hard to do sometimes because at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, like those are
Yeah.
really critical,
Mm-hmm.
really awesome people that I don't want to leave.
Right. I know. I know. You've helped them develop themselves to the highest point you possibly can, and
Yep.
then they fly. And
Yep.
that's like what,
And
yeah,
personally, for me, that makes me really proud. I know some of
exactly.
our other managers get real squirrely around that. Like, oh my God, what if we train them all up and they leave? It's just like, what if we train them and they stay here? Or don't train them and they stay here? Like, you can't keep all of the bad ones.
Oh. I think one of the things that I see very commonly, if I could change one thing about people advocating for themselves, it is, and you see it particularly when they're looking for a new job in a new company, is the way they see their skill set and their level of experience.
Mm.
So a lot of times people will have a tremendous skill set in a particular job.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they do is they attach to the job title rather than all the skills that are necessary to do well in that job. So that when they then want to leave the company and they want to look to do something else, they don't see the value in the skill sets. They see the value in the title. So
Mm-hmm.
let me give you an example, like a project manager, for example. Okay, like a project manager, if you were to break down the skills that are necessary for that job, being organized, having a ability to do some planning, using tools to keep things, like all of those kinds of things. if the person were to leave that role and then try to advocate for themselves somewhere else, they would feel like I can't apply anywhere unless it's the same job title. Except if it says senior and it says I need 4 years of experience and I only have 2, I can't apply. And I wish people could see themselves more adaptably, more expansively from their skill perspective, because a lot of times I will have people do an exercise where I have them just list out all the things that they love to do from a skill perspective. And it's amazing once you do that, how you can start using those words and those phrases to start searching for other roles that use the exact same skill. And there's a lot of crossover. There's so much crossover.
That's a good point. I mean, you touched on something like kind of like self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Which is so key. Even in one of our recent moves where one of our long-time salespeople moved over to be the VP of sales. There was a point where he was like, I haven't led the sales team, and he got like a little bit squirrely about it.
Yeah.
And then his first week that he's in this role is just like clearly the most natural thing for him to be in. He's doing great. He knows that.
That's so great to hear.
And the hard part is like, I wish he didn't have that little self-doubt during that couple of weeks during his transition. But everyone gets that, right?
Yeah. I think I think part of the reason that we do that is because we don't want to oversell ourselves. We don't want to make, I think that's the thing. Like, I don't want to tell my employer that I'm this if I've actually never been that. I've done all the things around that and I do all the exact same tasks and skills, but I've never actually done this. So I don't want them to think that I'm lying or saying something about myself that's not true. So it's usually people trying to be,
and that's a little bit of imposter syndrome right there, too.
It is, but it could also, and it could also be just being too black and white in how you're thinking about things and not being more flexible. And I really think like in advocacy for yourself, looking for a new job is a huge place where people do this, where they just go, "Ooh, I don't think I can." Like,
there are these areas where it's like, a lot of times employers want to hire someone who has done the job. And there's some times where like, I know someone will be good at that job, even though they have not actually functionally done it day to day.
Exactly.
It's like, how do you get your break? Because you won't get to have the experience of doing the thing unless you're given the opportunity to do the thing.
Exactly.
So, there's a little catch-22 there. And I think part of thinking about it for yourself is like, you just got to get over the hump and say, I will be good at that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I know I'm going to be. I've been training. I've been getting off my couch and I've been running the 5K and every single day for the past 5 years, so I can knock out the marathon.
So I can do a 10K for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, but people do that. The other thing that I see people doing a lot of is if they look at a specific job description or they look at something and they're comparing themselves to it, if you are looking at a different industry than the one that you are in, the exact same skill or role may be labeled and described in a very different way, and yet it's the same thing. This is another thing that people really, and so they say, "Ooh, there it is again, like I can't because it's labeled differently. It must mean something completely different than what I did." And again, that's just that really being so black and white about looking at something that you're just removing any flexibility whatsoever.
The other thing that you're talking about, people job hopping or applying for different roles at other companies. I see this all the time. This like grass is greener on the other side syndrome.
Oh yeah.
And I this is me advocating almost from the employer side, but again, it just be really careful or conscious of your goal, because we've had a handful of employees leave and then come back.
Yes, you have.
Because what they realized after they left was the culture is the thing that's so much more important to them than the paycheck.
Do you know what I just realized? So how many pods have we done?
I don't know. couple hundred,
More than that, almost.
almost 100, 250.
Okay, 250. We're always on the same side of the house. Do you know what I just realized in this conversation? It is possible that we are actually we're looking at something from the opposite framework today.
Well, how's that?
Well, because I feel like you're helping people advocate for themselves, but from the employer perspective, but also with the lens of, and don't do that. And I am looking at the lens of a coach from the personal and saying, go do that. Like,
that's funny.
It is, right? Yeah. It is kind of, but I think this is a really good perspective, and I'm so glad that we're doing that, because this is what it is. Like,
and that's a great call out, because I didn't quite realize I was doing that, but like my disclaimer at the top that I've never really had a job, so I don't really know how to from the employee side. But from the thing that I also appreciate from again an employer side is employees seeking to understand what our company's goals or what their team goal is, and see how they can fit in it and help push that forward.
Right.
Like, to me, that's how you really advocate for yourself. Is like, hey, let me understand what we are trying to accomplish here from the higher level, and let me show you how I can help push that forward.
Right. So now, if you look at it from the lens of personal advocacy, the only way that you can do that well is if you know what you want in a culture. And that is something that other people also don't do. It's like what they try to do is they try to, they become desperate looking for a job. Hey, I just need money. I got to get rehired somewhere again or whatever. And so they become almost a chameleon, an over chameleon at times, which is when things go sideways and they end up leaving, because they say, I can do anything. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But then the reality is that it really does matter. Yeah. So the goal is to be able to really take your own inventory. Like, what is it that you want in a culture? What is it that you value? Because then if you find a company and you start asking them those exact questions that you're talking about, and you find a love match, you're never going to want to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. As a person who has done a lot of interviewing, it's hard because, like, I don't like the power imbalance that often exists there. And I would say it's very rare that there's a even power balance when you're looking for a new job or interviewing for a new role. In two ways. Like, either one, the employer's got all of the power. Like, for example, we recently have an open position for a QA person. We got 350 applicants. Who's got the power there?
Are you kidding me?
No, we got the power. We got so many applicants that we get to just pick. We could just get to do whatever we want, right? It's an employer's market. Well, rewind 5 years ago, trying to hire software engineers, totally impossible. Like,
I remember
we put out a job, no applicants, right? All I'm doing is like hand-to-hand combat on LinkedIn trying to find people. That's an employee market, right? So the power is actually with the employees. So we're paying way more than normal. Like, we're doing all of these things as employers to go out of our way. But but there's always a power imbalance one way or the other. Yeah. And I think being conscious of the power imbalance is important when you're doing these self-advocacy things. Like, am I in the power position, or is the employer in the power position? Yeah. And when the employer's in the power position, my advice would be like, don't submit to that. Don't be so submissive. Don't be like, oh yeah, it's a hard employer
I wasn't expecting you to say that. That's interesting.
And so I'm just going to accept whatever crap deal, or I'm gonna be submissive to as energetically, out of fear. Right, out of fear. Like, I need this job, so I'm gonna just say yes to whatever they're saying and be really agreeable. Like, no, I think you should, say, these are my non-negotiables. This is what I need. Like, and come in with that confidence.
Right, and that's the thing. It's like, I think it's so hard for people to do that because of fear of, not having enough money, not having stability, all these things. And I think you're right, is that people really will give themselves away, either in salary or in benefits, or even just in a work relationship, because they think that they think they can. They think, you know what, I'll get over it.
Yeah.
I'll just get over it.
And it is a business deal.
It's a business deal.
And you are a
100%.
business too. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, this is one of those things where it's like super hard because you almost want to say, it's not personal.
yeah.
And that's like the worst possible phrase that exists in the
I hate that phrase,
in the
but
vernacular.
it isn't. It isn't.
Right. Exactly.
Like I had
Yeah.
I had a friend that just got fired after 25 years of working at a company. Zero notice, just pop, gone. And it really, really, really rattled her.
Yeah.
And as much as, of course I want to be sensitive and console her and everything, but it's just like, that is a spreadsheet decision made by people that
Yeah.
like just make spreadsheet decisions. Like,
Right.
I don't know what you want,
Right.
it says it is 100% not personal. It is numbers, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, actually, when you talk about self-advocacy, you bring up a really, really important component, and that is how deep you take this. When you look at your professional skill set and what kind of person you are in a professional environment, okay, or whatever work environment that you're in, to make that separation between your skill set and what you have for work ethic and that sort of thing, and what you care about, but that's where that stops. It's like after that, it's way more important that you take care of you and your family.
Yep.
The stuff that's really important are 2 layers deeper than any job or title or description that exists.
And we should totally have an episode about boundaries at work, because that's exactly what you're getting into, is like there's some boundaries that that you need to that you need to set and understand and hold tight to, or else a whole series of bad things happen.
Yeah, an avalanche. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation.
I agree. Sometimes I feel like I'm gonna talk as the oppressive business owner, and then
But you're not.
Then I'm not.
You're just not that guy. But
I can give you all the inside scoop on how to manipulate your employer.
But I do think you have really good perspective as an employer. You've seen a lot of stuff, like some of the stories that we've heard over the years of people and how and some of the entitlement issues and stuff like that. But I really think that this conversation is not about those that are feeling overly entitled. I think this is about the people that are the majority,
just the majority
that don't advocate for themselves enough. And it's just interesting to think about. And from our opposite perspectives, I've kind of enjoyed this.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.